we started some conversation in while we were talking about lunch and what this was about. And I think that, ideally, I would like to maybe set the ball rolling in the idea of maybe across the spectrum. When we think about it, we have representatives from all areas and all dynamics of when you think about where does addiction start, what are the important contributing pieces, housing, obviously, treatment, community supports, and developing that relationship. So maybe let's start down there with Robin and around some housing and the importance of housing and some of the stuff that you're doing in Lethbridge with other community partners and see what that feels like. Yeah.
Thank you. I'm turned on, right? Am I? Okay. All right. Wow, that sounded awkward. Okay. Let's just get started. So, anyhow, so Lethbridge Housing, what we are the housing management body mandated by the province of Alberta to provide affordable and social housing across the housing continuum, excluding the lodge. We're also the community-based organization tasked with making sure homelessness is non-reoccurring and as short-lived as possible. So some of the really neat things we do in Lethbridge is we create partnerships knowing that we can't do it alone. So we have some partnerships with everyone up here on the panel, and we create partnerships with Fresh Start, with their graduates and moving them through the housing continuum. We are working on a new thing with the Blood Tribe Department of Health with the shelter, creating pathways for individuals that are experiencing struggles in their life, whether it's chronic homelessness, episodic homelessness, something that takes them from here to there, and creating them a pathway that they can walk along and ensuring we're putting the supports in place to see them succeed. So I'm going to make it short and sweet, and we'll keep going from there.
Sure. Let's just let you pick who's next.
Tammie?
That's avoiding eye contact. Is this turned on? Can you hear? I chose a different phrase. I'm with Alberta Health Services, Addiction and Mental Health Outreach. So we're one of the newer programs, not the newest, but newer. And we're a low barrier program that provides support to all kinds of individuals, but typically people who struggle to engage with the mainstream services. It may be complicated to access. We go out and provide the care. And so our team, it's big. We have over 50 staff. We have occupational therapists, recreational therapists, mental health therapists, nurses, addictions counselors, peer support staff, and some other support staff as well. So we try to support the recovery model of care by working with people on the goals that are meaningful to them. For some people, that will be occupational, educational. For some people, it will be stabilizing mental health. For others, it's, follow-up addictions counseling. We're involved with clients at the shelters, so we're engaging with a lot of people at that level, trying to help them get into treatment. And then we are there waiting for them. If they choose to stay in this community, we'll continue to support them if that's appropriate. And we're very involved with the housing community. There's a very large community of concern around housing that we belong to, that Lethbridge Housing and Tina Young specifically is responsible for trying to keep us all on track and making sure that we're addressing some of the complexity of the housing needs. So I think that's why I was asked to come here today.
Oh, and that is all follow the terrorist.
Okay.
Hello. So good afternoon, everyone. Nastiokok Epi Huikamataki. I'm from the Blood Tribe within the Blackfoot Confederacy, and I'm just honored to be welcomed to this panel and to just share what I know related to housing. And I'm going to say I'm a sociologist by trade. So I do a lot of theoretical work understanding where we've come from, where we're at, and where we're going, both from a societal context, but also maybe more so from a First Nations lens, in understanding housing, the English terminology of housing, homelessness, the shelter, the introduction of shelters per se. So these didn't always exist. And I think it's important to understand that evolution of where we've come from so that we can understand why it is where we're at today and how we can move forward together. I do work with the Blood Tribe Department of Health. I'm the director of the wellness program. Wellness program is responsible for the mental health counseling, addictions counseling, and treatment referral. We have specialized psychologists that specializes in trauma, and as well many community programs. So ranging from missing and murdered Indigenous people, honoring life, which is the youth suicide prevention, the Indian residential school, Indian day school, day scholar programs. We work with a group of elders that are foundational to everything that we do, as well as we have a crisis intervention team that responds to different types of crises 24/7. We also operate the standoff shelter, which has been under a program for about 1.5 years now. So the complexities are many. The issues are diverse and dynamic, as well as understanding that First Nations people, I'll say Blackfoot people in this area, don't understand many times homelessness because they're part of the land. And so when we can flip the context, flip how we understand our connection to the land, what quote unquote housing means, it could mean an array of different things for many people. But for Treaty 7, Blackfoot territory, it's a different narrative, a different story altogether. And I think creating this open dialogue helps people understand and connect to each other and create meaningful relationships along the lines of truth and reconciliation, that everyone is part of that. All Canadians are part of that. So we all have this responsibility to respond. And it's not how huge or how dynamic, it's that we walk it together. And in any prayer we have, any ceremony we have, it's about connection, it's about honor, it's about respect. And so I hope to be able to shed light on some questions you might have as we move forward in this dialogue that we have today. Thank you.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Shahin Mehdizadeh. I'm the Chief of Police for Lethbridge Police Service, and pleasure to be here. Just wanted to thank Fresh Start for actually starting this dialogue and information sharing and understanding each other, because it's critical for us to have these discussions. And if I can at least today provide where the police role is in this whole area and what we are dealing with in today's society, hopefully I can shed some light on that. Just the fact that I'm sitting here with all these other partners in the community is a testament of where we've come over the years. I just finished 35 years in policing, most of it in the RCMP, and the last 3.5 years in Lethbridge. I've worked right across Canada, every province and territory you can think of. And these issues are everywhere. They're not unique to this community. But how we are dealing with them we have really progressed and moved forward in how we are dealing with them. And more importantly, from the police lens, what the police role is in what we can do to help the community. So police, just to give a highlight version, when we deal with addiction, we are not just dealing with one community or one background. Like our city has people from many other countries and many other backgrounds here, and our officers have to actually deal with everyone, trying to balance two things: public safety and also promoting the health of the community. Very, very difficult task to do, because when bad things happen, people are always looking at us to deal with it. When semi-bad things happen, people look at us to deal with it. And when things that have nothing to do with the police happen, they're looking at us to deal with it. So we are in the mix of everything that we talk about. And how do we bring that balance to do our job, keep the community safe, but also promote the health of this community, which comes through teamwork, partnerships. And again, I'm quite happy that, not only in this city, but many other communities in Canada, we are having this dialogue where police is actually involved in discussions to see how we can actually, what is our role to play to provide people who are suffering from addiction a path to recovery and get them on the right track. At the same time, when bad things happen, we are there to serve the rest of the community who actually expect us to do what we do. So I'll be looking forward to any questions you have. And again, thanks again to Fresh Start for doing this. Thank you.
Yeah, applaud for them, but not for me. Thanks. Just kidding. I like the things that I heard. I like the pieces of rewriting the narrative. I've already shared with Terri-Lynn, we were talking about, that idea of that Indigenous lens and community and, home is where you're at, and rewriting what is these pieces look like. I talked to Robin, like, we struggle with, do you call it post-treatment housing? Do you call it affordable housing? It all seems to continually hold some sort of negative connotation that you're under distress, or that you're problematic. In reality, how did we get here? The reality is how did we get here, and how did you? When I say we, I mean being a person in lived experiences. I understand what that's like. I understand the process that we go through to return back to it. My own path just validates the importance of community. I showed up somewhere where no matter what I did, they kept telling me to keep coming back. They offered me supports. They give me direction. They loved me. They guided me. How do we get that community back? We just got to Lethbridge, and Lethbridge is an amazing little community. It's a larger community. I won't say little. I'm from Calgary, the big city, so that everything seems little. This idea of coming together today is about putting that new perspective in it, learning some new lessons, and the importance of those pieces. I think maybe, I heard about CART. CART, is it just referred to as CART?
See.
Yeah. And how we want to become part of that. But more importantly, it's I don't want this about Fresh Start. I want to hear our community partners and those pieces that go into it. Like I like the idea of community and where do we belong? What does homelessness, what does contribute to it? How do we offer up those supports? So I'll turn it back over and I'll say the question, I guess, is, in building that sense of home, right? Robin coined a phrase today of pathways to success. Did I get that right? I want to be sure because I'm going to quote it a whole bunch in the future. Pathways to success as that housing solution. Where can you find a home? Fresh Start has this saying, welcome home. You're never alone. And it's I said in the meeting today, I said it's kind of like a double-edged sword, because we build this environment that just keeps returning when there's so many other resources and so many other abilities and so many other opportunities from organizations and groups to offer those supports. So Maybe we'll go back to Tammie. You can talk about some of the supports that are out there. Yeah, how's that? You just looked at me for a second. I got it.
Well, there's a ton of support, and that's the one thing that you realize with the cart table is that there's a lot of support and there's a lot of enthusiasm to be involved. Some of that support is your typical government support, like people like me with Alberta Health Services, but there's a lot of providers that are nonprofit groups, people that have been in housing and supporting people with mental health and substance use for a long time. Some people that are maybe a bit newer to it, but we've got, I think at the cart table, we've got some people from the government of Alberta, the Persons with Developmental Disabilities pieces at the table, Peak, Sasha. I'm looking in the crowd here. They're here. There's River House. There's, help me out, ladies, CMHA, Lethbridge, yes, Lethbridge Housing, of course. They coordinate it all. They keep us on track. Yeah, that's right. Youth to seniors. So Woods is at the table. There's yes, AHS. Yes, we're everywhere, but we're under construction. That's right. Things are changing with us, but we're just forging ahead. And I think the important part that I've realized, and I think this is there is some Indigenous influence that comes from this, is the importance of how important it is to be relational in this work, and that you have to build those partnerships and you have to take care of those relationships. And somebody needs to be responsible for bringing the people together. And then you need to take responsibility for staying in that community and contributing, being an actual person that contributes to the community. And I think we have that is really strong in Lethbridge. Maybe because it's a bit of a smaller city, we're able to do it a bit more easily. We've had to move, though. We were hosting these meetings. We're at Lethbridge Housing, but we've had to get a big room at City Hall because there is just a lot of passion around helping people and working together, because housing it's becoming an increasingly challenging issue. So
Can I jump in? Okay.
Yes.
So around this, there's lots of lingo in this, in what we do. But what we did when we took over the reins on the provincial funding side, we said, we can't do this alone. It takes a community. It takes a village of organizations and people to find success. And so this table was created of, you're the expert in this field, you're the expert in this field, you're the expert in this field. Let's sit down together and let's problem solve. And let's problem solve it one at a time. And sometimes it takes time to problem solve one at a time, but every single person that comes to that table, every single name that hits that table matters. They matter to someone. They matter to someone that loves them, that wants to see them succeed. So the important thing about that cart table is that we've been able to show, and very successfully, is that this community cares, and we will one at a time work together to help people find their highest degree of success.
Nope.
I love that. Right. It takes time. That's where you're going to go, is the big room in the City Hall, Jason, next week when they go to CART, just to let you know you'll be showing up. We heard that kind of that Indigenous angle. We've talked about the village. We've talked about, I want to go back to Terri-Lynn and say, can we talk about that Indigenous perspective of community? I just want to be sure that we know that we're not reinventing the wheel, or we've come up with some secret recipe that we've overlooked here. That it's already. I spoke at a conference, and we were talking about, one of the statements I said was, recovery needs a new narrative, right? We need to redescribe this, and it's ROSC and so on. It's not new. We've been doing it for a really long time, and what you're describing is that those pieces, but that same lessons came, pass along. I think sometimes we could, philosophically learn a little bit more. So if that's not out of order. Yeah. I don't even know what I'm asking, you know? So, yeah, you're good. You're good. You're going to do it.
Thank you. It's good that it's a dialogue, and we'll go where the conversation, where the energy needs to go. And I'm in no way an expert on my culture. I just have a lens that I will speak from. So connection and community could be, I guess, looked upon as your connection to your spirit, your higher power, connection to yourself, connection to those around you, connection to the land and the environment. And coming from a Executive lens and context, we are equal with everything around us. Humans along the way thought we were superior, and that's our ego and that disconnect from spirit. So if we really want to look at recovery and Blackfoot means to overcome, means to forgive, means to survive. So it depends on the context of the conversation, the individuals in the conversation. And so gamotan is the word that I've used often. And I write about recovery in my PhD dissertation. And when we flip the lens and make it about spirit, when we make it humanistic and not so disconnected in the context that we're talking about it today in Canadian society as those who have addictions. Even the word addictions, we need to clarify what that means. We're dependent on a substance, so we have to clarify a lot of things. We generalize too much, and that creates this notion of, well, I don't really know anything, because so many things are generalized. So many things are from the English vocabulary. Many of you have unique languages that you're trying to hang on to, and you see it from that lens. And so it creates a different narrative altogether. So one thing about the connection and culture and spirit and the First Nations way of knowing, being, and doing is, in fact, we didn't have addictive behaviors. It has evolved. And why has it evolved? And so when we can look at it from another narrative, another lens, I wasn't meant to be this way. Somewhere along the lines, this had occurred in Canadian society, in many societies, in fact. And why did that happen? So remember, I'm a sociologist, so I'm taking you back into a time where industrialization just bam, all over the world. So in fact, we're all manifestations of this without us really knowing that. And along the lines, we were disconnected from our community and unfortunately and sadly disconnected from our own spirit. And so many questions are raised, and only you can answer that, because then when you start connecting to your spirit, you'll get it. You'll get it. We're all born with a purpose. And when Canadian society, it's a capitalistic society, you have to understand that. Capitalism doesn't like spirit, because then you don't work for capitalistic ways. When you wake up, the important thing is prayer. I woke up today. Many people didn't. And that's a gift. So when we can flip it and look at it from ancient way of knowing, being, and doing, and an ancient perspective, then we look at where we're at today differently. We approach things differently. We come together differently. Outcomes are going to be different. Now you know this. You can't not know it now. It's been said. I have shared these words and this breath that I have coming from what I know, right? So collectively, we all come from communities and villages that spoke a language, that had ways of knowing, being, and doing, that you came together specifically somewhere. Inherently, your DNA knows that. And acknowledge that about yourself. Connect to yourself. Coming here and leaving today, now it'll be different. More questions raised probably, but the questions that are posed will be framed differently according to what you're hearing now from all the panelists. But I'm very when I'm asked to speak, I just ask the ancestors to guide me, because what I know is from my culture, these ancient teachings. So I'm just sharing that knowledge, that breath of life to you. And it's going to go somewhere, even if it's just for one individual. That's okay, right? Collectively, however, we can create change in Canadian society. We can change the landscape of what we're used to. We can empower ourselves, and we can take hold of this. You know, we talk about those who are affected, and I see it every day. I'm this director, and I have a huge relational responsibility, and in many realms. You know, I'm not here to talk about myself, but I'm part of the board of governors with the University of Lethbridge. I'm an alumni there. I taught at Mount Royal University. I've taught at many institutions in Southern Alberta in sociology. So I've spoken to thousands and thousands of people, and the consistent message here is that my purpose is to share knowledge, is to say we're grounded, all of us, in our own cultural realm. We all come from ancient teachings and people. And so if we can connect to that, then moving forward is different. It's not the same old, same old. We don't need to reinvent the wheel. We just need to connect to who we are. Dr. Gabor Mate talks about that. Dr. Eduardo Duran talks about that. If you check both of these individuals out, both my mentors, connection to spirit. That's the message. Now, if we can only get the Canadian government to get on board with that, it would be a different, take altogether. But I'm just going where my voice wants to go. And if there's any specific questions, again, I guess during the Q&A, you can get a chance to have at her moving forward. So thank you.
I didn't really have a question, but I got exactly the answer I wanted. I think you're on the right track when that happens. When I think about reinventing the wheel, I think about the part like we have a belief system, and we try to talk about having had a spiritual awakening as a result, and we talk about that sense of belonging and people deserving more, and that connectedness, this intuitive insight that we all know. I talk about it in the sense like you already know the answer. There's this internal dialogue that occurs that tells me the right thing to do, and whatever experiences I had control me in a different way. And And I think that ancient teachings, I like that because there's some pieces that we've done well. We've done well in the recovery community and in kind of adopting and adapting and bringing some of these pieces in. And we're, you know, for a bunch of Caucasians, we're getting to the idea of understanding that connection. But more importantly, I think some of those pieces come, you know, when we think about housing and we think about what that community looks like, if we could rewrite that narrative of, you know, I want to jump back. I'm going to jump back to you, Robin, in the sense that, you know, your new project that you're looking at, you know, you're talking about taking care of the, you know, the seniors and putting these pieces in place that we begin to start building a place, you know, that place we call home. You know, we got that idea. You see it when you come into Fresh Start, welcome home, you're never alone. People, well, this isn't your home. Well, when you show up and you feel part of and you're waking up each day and you're praying and meditating and doing that thing, it starts to feel pretty right. And if it feels right, you know, then I know I'm at home. And you know, how do we create that environment after so that cycle ends? I guess I don't know. I'm just the guy. I want to learn today. I'm just, you know, I got nothing profound other than, you know, what I'm going to walk away with. So, please.
So I didn't hear the question, but
There never is a question.
So I think what we try to do and what our new project is, so our new project is 30 supportive housing units in the city of Lethbridge. It's the first purpose-built supportive housing that we've ever done in the city of Lethbridge for individuals experiencing chronic homelessness that after we're able to successfully house them in a recovery-orientated system of care, they will continue to need supports, things like food security, things like addictions, mental health supports, things like persons with developmental disability support. So this is a project we're just super, super proud of. It's been a long time coming. It was announced about 8 times, but they finally passed me the grant funding agreement, and I'm like, okay, hold on, we're going now. So we finally got it done. Had lots of adversity to it. Had someone take out 3/4 of a page, almost ad in the newspaper to say those people can't be here. Please come and not allow this zoning to go through. So what we've tried to do in our new role is to ensure that everyone has a place on the housing continuum. No matter where you are on it, you have a place. So whether you're currently in a situation where you're in shelter or whether you're all the way up into our affordable housing mix, if something happens and your life changes, we catch you on a different part of that housing continuum. So that's something that we're really trying to create within the system, within Lethbridge. Calgary's done a great job of it. You have a pile of it, but Lethbridge is lacking. So we've created our new build and partnering with the Blood Tribe Department of Health, and we are now the owners of the Lethbridge Shelter. We will be expanding the Lethbridge Shelter in short order in collaboration with the needs of the Blood Tribe Department of Health. We hope to create a housing continuum in this city where on your good day, you're up, and on your bad day, you're down, but you still have somewhere to be, and you still have these wraparound supports around you. So that's kind of our goal with our new builds.
Nice. Shahin, I think when you talked about, you know, when something goes really bad, the police are there, and when something's not so bad, the police are there. And then when we got that stupid thing that nobody wants to deal with, somebody call the police, they'll take care of it. So when you think about that whole continuum of, like, how do you see your future? Are you guiding, you're leading your department in better tooling, better equipping, better empowering, you know, your people to navigate that, to contribute to that finding a home?
Sure. We've done many things in the last few years to really get our officers to be not just police, but also guardians of the community. And which is, again, when I talk about there's safety and then there's promoting health, they can be balanced. I truly believe that can be accomplished. So when our officers, give you a recent example, it happened and it happens all the time. they find someone. We just it was recently, and thanks to Robin, that we managed to provide proper shelter for a lady, a single mom and her child. They were living out of a car. Our officer didn't just look the other way. 20 years ago, I have to admit, we would have just looked the other way, not much. But today they're not doing that because they're caring, and that's actually showing in everything they do. When you talk about even sociology, and when we hire police officers, I can guarantee you in 5 years, in fact, they should all be given a PhD in that, because now they have to learn about everyone. They have to deal with everyone. They have to meet needs of many people from different cultures, everything. So after 5 years of police work, these individuals are getting much more knowledgeable and adaptable to who they need when they need dealing with public. So as you may or may not know, right now we are dealing with addiction issues, and that's driving a lot of people to be homeless, to actually lose all their confidence and the pride that they have to actually be homeless. As a human being, I don't think there's anything worse than being homeless and not having a place to go. I was talking about even in Stone Ages, when people could find a shelter, they found it, even in a cave back then, to actually have a place that they can, at the time, they can call home. So it's critical for people to have that. Actually, if you want to build pride and confidence in individual to help them on that recovery, I think is critical. So we also know about some of the challenges and some of the obstacles people have to drive them into addiction and homelessness, adverse childhood experiences. Every officer in my department right now is mandatory for them to take the brain story certification. And I took that first just because I wanted to see what the topic was all about. And I found it that it's really critical for police officers to have that knowledge too. So when you're dealing with someone who's suffering from addiction, even if we have to arrest them, if we have to charge them, there is still that human element that my officers have to say that this individual basically lost their life lottery when they were younger, and that's impacted them to the point that we have to deal with them right now. So there has to be that human element in what the police does, because if we lose that humanity, we shouldn't be putting the uniform on, because our job isn't just to get out there and arrest people and throw them in jail. Yes, some people we have to do that, some individuals, but not everybody needs that. So we have to have that human element that lens that we can put on the work that we do to support, and not only for current people, the individuals that we have to deal with, but we're also very reflective of the youth in the community and how can we engage with them so our future generation of officers don't have to deal with these individuals. And so we've really changed the lens of how we are doing things. Our officers are, again, I don't want to say that they're always doing that. There are times that we need to deploy. We need to have actually show action that, we have to serve the community safety, and that's critical. But even when we do that, we have to have that lens of care and humanity. So right now we are very engaged, even when we have to bring people into our custody in our cell block. We've been working with AHS, and we have actually a full-time, we don't have 24 hours, but majority of the time we have a paramedic in our cell block. And if people are suffering from addiction, we are actually putting them in a room voluntarily if they want to reach out for help, to contact help. There's a doctor at the other end to the virtual opioid dependency program that their treatment is basically either sent to our office, or officers go on and pick it up to bring it to them to start, hopefully get them started on their journey. Through our watch program, we're actually engaged with the downtown people who are suffering from addiction downtown, and they're actually trying to connect people to treatment through either VODP or actually get them into treatment. And I think the number last time I checked, they had almost 65 people that they had helped to get into treatment. Now, I'm not saying all of them are actually, again, it's a process. It's not that first time they go, they're going to be successful and they're out. But we are doing whatever we can to do the outreach that we need to do to help people before we have to arrest them. Because really, at the end of the day, unfortunately, a lot of times, if we don't, we are going to be putting handcuffs on them, which is really not answer to the problem. So, and even from the use of force, like the policing has changed so much. I just had to take this mandatory course, which is ground fighting. And I thought, oh, here we go. Old guy like me having to go and start ground fighting. I have no issues with that. But again, what we are teaching people right now is not about hitting people anymore. Actually, we are right now starting to use the Gracie model of self-defense and grappling. So actually, when our officers are taught that, they're not punching anyone. They're just holding the person. They go on their back, hold the person in a position till they get tired of fighting, and then we just deal with them. So we have really changed what we do. I'm not saying that we can do that 100% of the time. There are times that we need to do what we need to do, but we are really changing how we are training our officers and trying to get them to better serve the public, the community, and all the citizens. At the end, we have to serve every citizen in this community, regardless of their background or heritage. And we want to make sure we bring that balanced approach. So policing world has changed, and we are trying to adapt with it. And every year is changing, so we have to keep current and adaptable to those to serve the community better.
So I want to say one thing, pat the police on the back just a little bit. Don't forget this in case I get pulled over. No, just kidding. But the other thing that our police do that is just outstanding that the chief didn't mention is the police and crisis team that we have in Lethbridge. We have two police and crisis teams, right? Still, we're hoping to expand that one day. But what a great program for Lethbridge when we have people in crisis we have already housed them. You know, the easiest way to prevent homelessness is to keep someone housed. So we every time when there's someone who's struggling, maybe it's an addiction, maybe it's a mental health condition, maybe it's both. That police and crisis team will come and step in and do what they need to do to ensure the success of those individuals so that we can ensure that they can remain housed. So we really appreciate your police and crisis team as well. They do such a great job. So thank you.
Well, we had one team here which through some whining on my part, we increased it to 2. Because again, for people who don't know, there's a police officer and a healthcare professional that's partner up to actually be there. So we've when we increased the team from 1 to 2, we're actually seeing much more than double production and output in what they do. And my dream is one day to actually make that into 4, so that we have 24/7 coverage for that team to be able to respond to anything. But again, it takes one police officer and one AHS, the worker and support. So haven't been able to. I don't want to actually reach out to AHS yet to see if they can give us 2 more bodies because I don't know if I can match the 2 officers we are hiring right now. But at some point when our staffing levels get up to snuff, that's certainly somewhere I want to go to have that program 24/7 in the community.
Nice. I think, so if you don't know me, it's a psychological theme park up here on the Mehdizadeh. I was thinking about some pieces. That evolution of pieces, we go through this industrial evolution and we talk about we weren't born this way. I didn't wake up and decide to be a drug addict. I inherently I wanted more in life. And as I'm listening, I'm thinking about we need more of a recovery revolution because, we see an evolution in the police, we see an evolution in housing and we see this evolution coming in a slower manner in which addiction and the trauma and the pieces that contributed to us getting here and that idea, because I hear about caring and I hear about compassion and love and family and coming together and all these, empathy and understanding, and now AHS, what can we do more? How does that look out there for, bringing all those aspects together? Like the idea of bringing together the community is, how do we get to go back and talk about the story with others and change that lens and those appearances and those ideas and that understanding of, yeah, we're doing it. And some people are going to say you're not doing enough and you need to do more. But what more can we do? What is being done? How can we contribute? Like, so Shane's asking, maybe in the future, do we add on? How do we begin bringing this to the table? Do you think, not just to get them the people, but that whole revolution of recovery to really stopgap the decades and centuries of where we're at? I know it's pretty deep, probably a little out of left field. She's like, what the fuck is he actually asking?
Well, I think one of the steps that we're taking right now is coming under a provincial direction with the recovery model of wellness. So that's going to give us a little bit more of a consistency provincially, and we'll be able to look at what is working in other parts of the province. There are some gold standard programs that aren't in Lethbridge, and being able to look at what we can bring into the community. PACT, the mental health therapist part of it, is part of the outreach program that I'm with. I know our PACT has just posted a position for a mental health therapist, so that will work with the RCMP as well. So that's expanding, and it's working really well in, I know, the northern part of the province. They really like the RPACT teams. People are just more sparsely populated, and I think it works well. And we haven't had that with the RCMP here. We're trying to be everywhere we can be. We're all struggling with the same issues of being able to retain people who are experienced, having enough support for the people who are coming in. They're passionate, they're new, but they need more support. Our nursing team is at the shelter twice a week, providing care to people who are in the shelter. We have addictions counselors, rec therapy. We're trying to work at that level. We're also trying to support people getting into treatment. We're trying to support people who are coming out of treatment, and it's exhausting and it's overwhelming. And I think the staff themselves are really hard on each other, or hard on themselves. They're not hard on each other, at least not that I'm aware of. Probably once in a while, but they're really hard on themselves. They feel like they're not doing enough. Especially, we get some people who are very new, and what you've learned in academia is not as easy to apply in real life, and they're struggling with that. They're second guessing whether they can continue on with this work. So that's where that community and those partnerships are really important, and having, somewhat of a intergenerational group of people working together who have seen some things, and some people who are new, and trying to support each other to stay engaged and to stay healthy, and to remember that, their mental health matters as well. And so it's well known that we need to continue to grow and to expand. And I know our director, Paul, is always trying to figure out ways that we can get resources, and we've moved into grant funding and things that are quite different from how AHS used to operate. We operationalized everything. Everyone had a permanent job and security. Now we've got a lot of grant-funded positions, but we're taking on new things. We've gotten more into STI and the permanent supported housing funding, which hasn't been operational, but is something that we're working with to try new things. So I think we're learning as we go. Some things are working really well. We know without a doubt we need permanent supported housing, but we know that one of the cornerstones of mental health is agency. And so despite the fact that we know some people would benefit with more support, that doesn't necessarily mean they want that level of support. Some people want a housing subsidy and a steady source of income and some food security. And for them, that's a significant improvement in their quality of life. And for other people, they really just want the pressure of chronic homelessness off their back. And they want to be somewhat brought into a community that that loves them and cares about taking care of them for the rest of their foreseeable future. And sometimes some of the work that we're doing is, it really is the problem of substance use has gone on for a long time, and we get past the point of being able to restore people to health. And so there is a part where we are sort of palliating that and providing care. And that's really hard on staff, right? Nurses love to fix things, and they like to see cure. And depending on how far substance use has gone, it isn't always possible. And we've lost a lot of people that we take care of. And there's a lot of grief, and our leadership and people like me, we have to support staff every time that happens. It's hard. It's a loss for everybody. So it's a big job when I talk about it like that. You know, it is a bit overwhelming, but that's the importance of community. And you can't do it in isolation. And that's why everybody, the usual community of people who care, they're all in the audience. And that's great. They don't get tired of coming out and supporting.
Yeah, so true. And I think that, you know, again, you know, even though the topic was confusing, the answer was perfect. Like, it was perfect. Because the truth of the matter is what, you know, when I say what more can we do, it's not because let's see how we can wring it out of us. Because I got an amazing team, and we've just learned a whole lot more down in Lethbridge. We got these, you know, new people and the old people, and everybody just, you can ask and they'll just jump to the table. And then it gets confusing because, you know, our Calgary location is made up of a bunch of people with lived experience and no real academic. Well, no, we do. We've had to gain it over the years, but we are able to bridge those pieces. But I think I go back to the, you know, the full page ad or 2/3 of the page ad, you know, not in my backyard. We fought this scenario so long. We've been there, you know, every day. It's people's brothers, sisters, mothers, children, grandfathers, neighbors, colleagues, but not in my backyard. And you're right. It's the same usual suspects. They show up, you come out, you show up, you dedicate your time. Nobody knows about the 7:00 meeting you went to last night that you didn't get paid for, you know, or the paperwork you've sat up to, or the, you know, the extra hours and those extra miles that went. But how do we change that back to the community to say, it is your backyard, right? It is your backyard. How do we broaden this backyard so that we become more active and so on? Because we can have institutions, AHS, and we can have police departments, and we can have these things, but how do we get back to that place where, you know, this is our yard? Like, we all have this responsibility together to contribute, and it can't be carried on the backs of the same 15 people around the table, or, you know, because that happens. That's true. And I'm not here, you know, Shahin referred to it as whining. I'm not going to say whining. I'm going to say, like, somebody's got to tell the truth. Like, come on, let's take a look at it. Like, let's have the, you know, I call it let's have the adult conversation. Like, nobody likes to hear it. Let's sugarcoat it. Let's redirect it. Let's have another meeting about it. No, let's rip it apart and talk about it, man. Like, this is real. This is the real deal. Like, how do we broaden that perspective and put it on people without, you know, catching there like any? Yeah, please.
Just a couple of comments. Number one, the problem is when you look at even, you know, we talk about evolution of drugs, drugs that are being used today, and their addiction and potency and danger. 5 years ago, they weren't around. 10 years ago, we were dealing with totally different things. 25 years ago, worst thing was alcohol. I know alcoholics, you know, drunks on the street. There's been a constant evolution. And it's all about the economy of that side of the dark side of the society. People who actually thrive on making a profit based on putting other people in misery. And in this case, there's addiction. So there's that element. And that I don't believe that's going to change. And we were talking about this, you know, even as we come up with some potential solutions to help people with what the drugs we're dealing with today, they're already working in labs to make something even worse. And this continuum continues to go on. So I've had this discussion with some community groups who at times they've told me we have to eliminate the problem. And well, you have to tell them there's no elimination of anything. Really, we can't just take these people and eliminate people. We don't live in those countries. It's a thing that we have to at least recognize that the problem is here. The problem is going to be here, in the future. How do we actually manage that? How do we learn to live with it? And how do we help these individuals to hopefully help the future generations? And for those who are actually suffering, they can get them in the right path. But the whole idea of elimination and getting rid of the problem, these issues have been going on for centuries. And the problem is that the reality is that they're going to continue to go on. But there's a way, I think, that we can balance how we approach the problem. And that's where the community comes in, that we have to have a community who actually understands that and actually wants to be providing some solutions and help into the problem versus complaining about police, AHS, housing. It's easy to sit in your home and complain about everyone and not doing anything about it. So that's where we need to start taking our communities, actually get out there and do something and help the cause versus complain about everybody who's trying to do something.
Very much so. I think philosophically, I go back to Terri-Lynn in the comment, when you think about the drug trade and that capitalist kind of view of it, and if recovery is about forgiveness, which we understand it is, right? Like anybody in recovery here will understand some of the first pieces is that self-forgiveness and that healing and the pieces that go along with that. And maybe it's just asking too much. Maybe it's just asking too much of how do you get to the community that understands and strives with that, because it's still a capitalistic community. Like there's still going to be pieces. Everybody's, like, I don't have time for that. I'm busy. I'm going to work. It's being driven by all these things. Yet we can, pontificate all we want about the values and the beliefs. And I know that everybody showed up here has those. They have empathy, compassion, understanding, love, tolerance, forgiveness, and or we wouldn't be here. And there's pockets in the community. I'm not saying everybody who's not here is not. But I something, inherently I just drive to understand and wish to desire the bigger piece of how do we come together to get that a different view, because we go back and forth, community, more help, more things, government comes up and they pay more money and we restructure this and reinvent the wheel and respin it over here and try this. And, for you young people, and you've been around as, long time, you remember like, we tried that in 1982. Well, I was driving here today and it was kind of funny because we were saying, we went past Claire's home and back in the ADAC days, and then, remarkably how the Claire's home looks just like Fort McLeod and, and recovery communities. And, it's kind of like when fundamentally I think somewhere, in the beginning is this piece. Maybe do you want, Jalen, that go back to that capitalist, that community, that piece? Can you? Yeah.
That's the question.
Oh, pretty good.
Yeah. So a couple of things that I've heard the other panelists share, and I'll come back to capitalism. So many of you probably have heard of Dr. Gabor Mate, right? And oftentimes he doesn't say, don't ask why the addiction, but why the pain, right? So why the pain? Then we can go to capitalistic economies. And then we can compare to other types of economies around the world, egalitarian. So when we adopt this way of thinking in this economy, then it's really individualistic. But no one explained it that way. We don't understand that right now because it's so fast-paced. We can't even keep up. We don't even tell our children why they're going to school. We don't even know why they're school. Right? That evolution of specialized training and teaching and knowledge sharing, talk about capitalism and food security. How many of you have land to produce your own food? How many of you were taught how to grow food and the nutritional value in that? These life skills were taken away when industrialization had occurred, because there was this need to have these specialty training so that the wages could increase. And not all of us understand that or in that. Since 1950s, our population has doubled. And at that time, it was about 3 billion. Well, now we're at 7-8 billion. Too short of a time frame to keep up with all of this. How did that happen? How did the teachings happen? Is it the same for everyone? So all of these elements, and we could go on, but do you see how confusing it could be, how disconnected we've become? So ancient times, we were connected to our product, whether it was painting or blacksmith or sewing or weaving. We are connected to our product, right? And then through the chain of industrialization, now we have to make more of that, sell for a profit. So cities were born. This individualistic thinking had come out of that. So we get lost in that. For Indigenous people, specifically for Siksikaitsitabi, which I can speak to, being from that ancestry, spirit was so important and relationship was important. Where does that fit in a capitalistic economy, right? Indian residential schools lasted almost 140 years. That's 7 generations. So 7 generations were taught something other than what they knew. So for many First Nations people trying to catch up to that, it's not why the addiction, why the pain, why the disconnect to spirit. And many times the program that I oversee, one of the programs is our day treatment program. And the foundation is our culture, is prayer, is elder involvement and elder teachings. We don't realize this, but the medicines are within us. We just have to get out of our own way and come to know ourselves, right? It's very challenging. I'm just me. This is how I organize, the way I can make sense out of it, because I could be a really angry woman, given that I'm First Nations, given that I'm under the Indian Act, given that dogs probably have more rights than a First Nations woman does under the Indian Act. So I've overcome a lot, right? I've had to. And I choose not to be angry. It doesn't do anyone any good. It hurts myself. I hurt myself when I'm angry because I don't let the blood flow, the oxygen flow, right? When you're angry and stressed, and all the naturalness of who we are gets affected deeply, deeply. When we're not loved and nurtured in a loving way. Ancient times, First Nations babies, they were it. They were loved by everyone. Our elders were taken care of. So that connection was disrupted. And then now we come fast forward to where we are today, and we see a lot of the apathy. A lot of the statistics aren't very good. They're high statistics, but they're not very good. And creating an understanding of why that is a challenge. Because of colonization, because of industrialization, because of the land and the taking of the land and our connection to the land. We didn't have homelessness. We traveled with the buffalo. We traveled due to the seasons. We're connected to the seasons. Right now, we think changing the clock or turning the clock forward or backward is going to do us justice. What does that really mean, though? Really? It doesn't change anything. It doesn't. So, but we do it. We don't ask why. We do it. So colonization has also affected all Canadian members, not just First Nations, Métis, or Inuit people. So lots of thought-provoking elements I'm throwing out there related to not housing, homelessness. How do we work together? That's on the surface. But you go deep down inside your purpose, your responsibility, where are you going? Know it. Know yourself. Know why you do things. Know why you participate in different circles, in different systems. Know your purpose, because you're responsible for everyone else as well. That's a big responsibility. We might think it's individualistic, but all of you here, now you can't know this. Now you know it. What are you going to do about it? So I'm going to always go back to my mentors when I talk about elements and the knowledge I've acquired and sharing that knowledge. That's my responsibility. I'm a teacher. I'm a lecturer. I share knowledge. I teach what I learn. And I think I've organized it well enough so that I can make sense to those that don't have, this academic mindset. But I can sit and talk with any one person and try and make sense of where we're at today. I think that's a lot of what we're trying to do, how to make sense of where we're at today. How can we collectively come together in a holistic way moving forward? Some of the messages I've heard is community, collectiveness. Ancient times, our genetics are saying that's where we've all come from. If you look at all your family lineage, where you come from, if you're not from Blackfoot territory, then you're from somewhere else, right? And your teachings from your ancestors and how they lived, they took care of each other. It's really sad that there's seniors, elders at a shelter. That's shame on Canadian society. Now we know this. What are we going to do about it? What are we going to do about it? All of us are responsible for this. All of us. And if we have the ways and means to push this momentum forward in a good way together, wow, think about the change that can be made in such a short time. So I hope I've addressed. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah. I have to admit, listening is that I can feel it inside. And when I think about, we talked earlier, it's not necessarily about housing, but it is about housing, because that housing is a place where we end up being. And as I was listening, I was thinking about, we developed this community within Fresh Start, and it's a beautiful community. We got alumni, we got staff, and we have people of like-minded values and beliefs and supports in place. And it just isn't about the house. It's about the community that builds. In Calgary, we have various apartment buildings. Like, one of them is 2 apartment buildings with a lot, common area in the middle out in the, and it says "Welcome Home" there. And everybody that lives comes up through this little archway, and they got the barbecue set up, and they come down and they share food, and they, somebody brings. Maybe I'm just too idealistic. I think that we can do it because I've experienced it in such a small way. And then when I hear that description, it's like, it's real. And when I think about all the work that AHS has done over the years, and all the pieces, and the Robin and the police, and everybody's contributing to this momentum, it just almost feels like we're at that apex moment of like, somebody just come along and push us over the edge a little bit to get back to that place. And, I think it's, I'm gonna say I won't speak anymore. I want to say thank you so much for your amazing insights and sharing and willingness to partake in something that's got no structure, and questions that make no sense,
Okay.
However, I sit very comfortable thinking that the right words were shared and the right things were said, and there's some thoughts that were put forth.